Hey everybody, I'm Two-Tone the Artist.
I'm Mitch the Peach.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Hills Are Silent podcast, where we chop it up about the games of yesterday, today, chop, and tomorrow. Let's roll into it, everybody. All right, Mitch, it's been a week. It's been a stressful week at work. It's been a long week. But I managed to get some gaming in. We managed to get some gaming in, and we got a game that you and I have been playing together through co-op that we've been itching to talk about. And that game is Resident Evil Outbreak. Originally released on the PlayStation 2 way back in, I think, like 2003 or sometime around then. Now, I played this game when it first came out. I was super hyped for this. So, I loved Resident Evil even back then, but my one gripe with it was that it's a single-player game. I always wished that I could play it cooperatively with someone else. And then here they come. Capcom comes with Resident Evil Outbreak, which is not only the first online Resident Evil game, but one of the early online games on PlayStation 2 in general. A lot of people forget that you could go online with PlayStation 2. Wasn't as easy back then, I'll tell you that much. So you had to buy a modem to attach to the back of your PlayStation 2. You had to get a headset, had to get a keyboard if you wanted to type to people, and it supported dial-up internet as well as broadband internet. For those who are old enough to remember dial-up internet, I had a very interesting conversation with one of my coworkers the other day because he was too young to know what dial-up internet was, so I had to school him on how horrible and inconvenient dial-up internet was back in the day. But hey, it was all we had, so back then it seemed amazing.
I remember my dad would always get super pissed off that I was on the internet for too long as he could never make a phone call during that time.
Yeah, that was the thing about dial-up. It tied up your phone line. Man, another thing I had to explain. I was like, there used to be this thing called landlines where you would have a phone at your house and it wasn't a cell phone and everybody shared the line to talk to people. And then there used to be this thing called dial-up internet that would use the landline so nobody could make phone calls while somebody was on the internet. It was a whole spiel I had, a whole history lesson I had to give this kid, which made me feel like an old man, which I am, but with age comes wisdom, so I'm not tripping about it.
That's right.
Anyway, getting way off topic. So, I was super hyped for this game to come out on PlayStation 2. I bought my modem, and I bought my keyboard, because when this game came out, yes, it was revolutionary, but also Capcom dropped the ball on a few things about this game. One of them being that even though the PlayStation 2 had a headset for other online games, Resident Evil Outbreak did not support it. And I found out the hard way after buying a keyboard for the PlayStation 2 that it didn't even support the keyboard text. So you couldn't even type to talk to people. So you have a four-player cooperative game that has puzzles in it because it's a Resident Evil game and it's a survival game. So communication is key when you're trying to survive a zombie apocalypse.
I can't imagine somebody beating one level out of this game without communication.
Yeah, so they had no voice chat, no text chat. Their solution was, with one of the buttons, you could click the button and your character would say something based on your current state. So this is literally the game guessing what you're trying to say. So it's like a guess what I need to say button. So if you're low on health, your character might say, oh, I'm hurt, or oh, I need ammo or something, or hurry up or something. It almost seemed like it was random. So it was useless. It was no help in communication.
I remember I've accidentally pressed that button as we were playing. I just told my character just goes, "Help me, help
Yeah,
me."
not useful at all. So I played this game back then. It's not straightforward. It's something that you have to play these levels over and over and over again through trial and error, and also hope that the people you're playing with know what they're doing. And I remember playing it back in the day, and people just running in separate locations, people picking up key items, not knowing how to use it, screwing everybody else over because they'd pick up a key item, then they get eaten by a zombie, and now that key item doesn't exist anymore, and you can't beat the level. There's a lot. It was hectic. And because of that, I never beat it back then. I was like, this is a great in concept. I like the graphics. I like what they were trying to do, but ultimately, it was too difficult. So anyway, but I always wanted to beat it. So here we are, years later. Of course, the servers have been shut down for a long, long time. So how, you might ask, are Mitch and I playing this old online PlayStation 2 game years later after the servers are shut down? Well, of course, there's an amazing modding community that, through luck and ingenuity, have been able to bring a server online that basically imitates the old server. And from the way I understand this, just from what I've read about it, is that... Actually, you know what? I'm not even going to go into the technical details. That's a whole other thing, and I don't even totally understand it. So I'm not the guy to totally speak on it. Anyway, they were able to recreate the server. So now you can play this game through their dedicated servers. You can play this game and its sequel, Resident Evil Outbreak 2. Now, the thing is that the server that they recreated, based on what they had, they were only able to recreate the Japanese server. So that means you have to play the Japanese version of the game, which fortunately a patch was made to patch the Japanese version of the game with English text. Not completely, but like about good 90% of the game has been translated. So it's fully playable in English, and you can understand what's going on if you don't speak Japanese. So yeah, you can load up the PlayStation 2 emulator on your PC, and through a series of other difficult steps, you can finally get it set up to where you can connect to this remade server and play the game. And this game was always a little janky, but it seems like maybe this server is somewhat buggy. I don't remember. I don't remember if the bugs we encountered existed in the original game, or if it's just because of all this recreated server.
I will add that the server itself is actually still like really populated, especially on the weekends. We noticed there's actually a lot of people that are taking advantage and playing these games.
Yeah, it's very weird seeing that there's like still this cult following for this old janky Resident Evil game. All right, so that was a long-winded setup, but that's how we've been playing it. And I wanted Mitch and I to beat these games before something were to happen to the server. The server's been up for years. We're very grateful for it, but you never know. Whoever's running this may decide they don't want to do it anymore, or there could be many reasons why this would just shut down, and then that opportunity to still be able to play this game online is lost forever. So Mitch and I are about 95% through the game. And we'll get into that. I think it's time to jump into, what is this game like? Is it actually enjoyable? Is it worth your time? What has our experience been? So for that, I'm going to hand it over to Mitch and let him let me know how he's been feeling about the game.
Yeah, I think I'm a good gauge recently because I have been playing a lot of the single player Resident Evil games. So it's interesting seeing the other side in this, like you said, a bit janky multiplayer, almost cult followed Resident Evil game. And honestly, I mean, it operates like an old Resident Evil game in a way, and playing a co-op with you, I thought it's been an enjoyable experience. I was a little apprehensive at first, I will say that, because when we booted in that first level, we kind of didn't exactly know what we knew what we were doing, but not to the point, the controls are something that you got to get used to, as well as like some of the gameplay mechanics. So Mike and I guess to back up a little bit, before you enter the game, you can choose a character. And each one of these characters has their own special ability. There's one character that he has a coin that he has, and that coin makes it so that his weapons are more durable, or his melee weapons are more durable. So Mike and I, strategize because there is very limited inventory space. Like in many Resident Evil games, you have to manage your inventory. And Mike and I kind of found a way to pick two characters that really balanced each other out really well and really gave us the benefits we needed to get through levels easier. So I took a character that had a backpack, so had more inventory slots, which has been a huge help for us. I don't know if we would have been able to get through these levels as easy as we had without it. And then Mike has a character who can lockpick, which is also very fortunate for us getting extra ammo, extra health, and even sometimes even finding ways to bypass certain enemies by unlocking doors and getting through areas that we would not have been able to go in otherwise. So I think it was a bit of a trial and error as we first started, which is why I was like, I don't know if we can beat this, Mike, with just the two of us. I thought we might have to recruit maybe at least another person to play with us, maybe just for the inventory space, if anything. But once we got going, we caught our stride, and we've kind of been burning through the levels better than we anticipated. We really thought we was going to take a couple tries per level to beat this game, because it is quite difficult. A lot of the puzzles are difficult. A lot of the enemies are, hard to get by, and there are a lot of other nuances that are different in some Resident Evils. I'll let you chime in a second, but I want to talk about the infection rate. I think that's a huge thing, and probably one of my favorite parts of us playing the game is when we were in one level. Whenever your infection rate, once you get bit by a zombie, your infection rate starts to rise, and it'll just keep rising as you go through the level. There are ways to slow it down. There are pills you can take to slow down the infection rate, but you're always gaining infection rate as you go through these levels. Well, Mike and I were on this one portion, and we were about 99% through the level, and we did not want to restart this level again. And Mike is on his infection rate is like at 98% at this point. And we are on this final boss battle. And once we finish it, we have to sprint to the other end of this tunnel, or in these sewers, to get to the end. And I made it because my infection rate was fine. I could still run at full speed. Mike's infection rate and his health were very low, so he is limping and trying to make it all the way to where the cutscene will land and he can get out of this level. And I think you made it, Mike. What do you say, like 99.7% infection rate?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it, man. That was one of those moments I jumped out of my chair and I was like, yes! Yes, man! Yes! Because, these levels are like an hour plus long. So the last thing you want to do is die right at the end and start all the way over. But yeah, I couldn't believe it. I'm sitting there just slowly limping along, and I'm just like watching my infection rate go from 95%, 96%, 97%. I knew I just had to make it to the end of that hall to end the level. And that's one of those exciting moments. So yeah, your infection rate, as soon as you get bit, yeah, it's like the timer begins. It's like now the countdown begins. You have a limited amount of time to finish this level.
And with Resident Evil games, that's tough, because if you're going in without any sort of strategy guide or anything, there's a lot of puzzles that take some time if you don't know what you're doing, and that just, if you have to go back and double back to another room that you didn't grab something in, or maybe didn't complete a puzzle, very quickly, like that can really screw you over in the end. And it almost did in that level.
Yeah, with this game, it's all trial and error. You have to figure out what you need to do, and then you play through the level again, and then you're able to go through it a lot faster. And the first level took us a couple tries. We lucked out with the second, third, and fourth level, which we somehow managed to beat it the first time around. And the last level, we're still working on the last one. which I'll get to that too. Man, that was that was some cheap stuff right there. But yeah, Capcom, it does not seem. I mean, they were really experimenting with this. It was the early days of console online multiplayer, and they're trying to figure out how to make it work in a game that was so grounded in a single player experience. But they definitely, I feel like they did not have their A team working on this game, because there's a lot of jank to it. The cutscenes are short and janky. The voice acting is horrible, even for Resident Evil standards. And it's a stressful game because it's infinitely respawning enemies, which I've spoke about several times on this podcast, that I cannot stand that. And you're constantly being pursued, either by some boss monster in the level who's constantly pursuing you, similar to the tyrants in the other games, or just by zombies. I mean, they will follow you from room to room to room. And there's some cool mechanics to kind of counterbalance that. Like, you can have one person hold against the door to like barricade it while zombies are trying to break in, while the other characters are going around looking and searching the room. I mean, it definitely ramps up the tension, and there's just like, there's no time to relax. But it doesn't always mesh well with Resident Evil, because there's a lot of notes and things you pick up to read that either progress the story or flesh out the backstory, or tell you hints on how to beat the puzzles. So it's very stressful to be sitting there trying to figure out a puzzle while just infinitely respawning zombies are relentlessly trying to break into the room and eat you.
Yeah, and it was unfortunate, especially with the last level that we're playing now. It came to the point where you couldn't hold the door. They just busted through at some point. I mean, no matter how long you sat there and tried to hold it.
Yeah, and it, like Mitch said earlier, it was even trial and error with what characters we should be playing with, because some are more useful than others. And another thing, it's an old game, so it's got that old game jank and that old game difficulty, but also there's a lot of those cheap deaths, which I cannot stand, especially for a game where you might be playing a level for like an hour and a half. To be an hour into a level just to get killed by some instant cheap death and have to start all the way over is so infuriating. I can never seem to say that word. Infuriating. There we go. All right. Thanks for bearing with me, everybody. Anyway, for instance, last night we were playing the very last level, and there's a pier that you can walk across with a dock. And off in the distance, we see that there's zombie sharks in this water swimming around this dock. So, and I called it out. I'm like, don't tell me this is some like instant death crap that's just going to screw us over, because at this point we were well over an hour into the level. We had made some significant progress. Sure enough, we walk across the boardwalk, a shark jumps out of the water, knocks me into the water, and another shark comes up and swallows me whole in one bite. And I was like, you got to be kidding me, man. I knew that was going to happen.
You totally called it.
And yeah, it just screwed us over. We were doing well. We had the key items we needed. We were good on health and ammo. But it was one of those situations where the developer just wanted to be mean and insta-kill the player. And that happened again. And happened another time in the very first level. There's a window that if you walk too close by it, a zombie will burst through it, grab you, and pull you through the window, instantly killing you. So stuff like that, that's just like, this does not need to be in this game. This game's already difficult enough without these like instant death traps.
There was the other moment where I thought, this is the one I was thinking of, when you jumped. We were at the end of the level, I think, and you had jumped in. We had blown up the oil rig or whatever. We lit the match, and we blew up an oil rig, lighting all these zombies on fire, and we just had to jump into this little canal area, and I was a little too slow doing it. I think I might have been messing with my inventory or whatnot, and then when I was trying to press A, it wasn't working, to the point where the cutscene triggered because Mike went farther than where I went, or he went far enough to trigger the cutscene, which killed me.
Yeah, it's like if you're not there with the whole team right in that second, all the other people die. And again, this goes back to playing this years ago in the original PlayStation 2 where there was no voice chat or anything. Like, how would you communicate that to the rest of the team? One player could easily screw the whole rest of the team over and wipe out the rest of the team. So, anyway, you know what I just realized? The footage I captured is of what we were talking about, of me being infected at 90-something%, trying to limp to the very end. So, I mean, I know some people are watching the footage and some people are just listening to the podcast. But anybody that's watching on the screen right now, you can see I'm trying to make it down to the end of this tunnel. And right now my infection rate is at 98.5%, and I still got a ways to go. So, yeah, this was insane.
I just remember because you're updating me every like 10 steps you take. You're updating me on where you are because I can't see. I had already hit the cutscene. You're updating me on where you are, what percent you're at. And I'm like, please, we don't want to do this again.
Yeah, for real. All right, I'm just watching out. For anybody who's just listening, I'm walking down this tunnel, and I am at just hit 99% infection rate. Yep, 99.02% infected when I made it to the end. I had less than 1% to go, which translates to maybe about 10 seconds.
And we had just got done facing this water monster boss, so like we really didn't want to have we didn't know what we were doing when we started that fight, which I think took a lot of time as well. And I want to say you were pretty quick and looking up a guide really quick. We're like, we got to figure out how to beat this guy really quick so we can get going.
And I'm under pressure too because we know that the time is ticking. We got to figure out how do we kill this boss.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that was all right. So the game definitely has some exciting moments. So
yeah,
there's reason to play it. You can look up tutorials on YouTube on how to connect to the fan-made servers that still exist. But yeah, we'll be finishing this last level maybe tonight, maybe some other time this weekend. But we'll see.
It's another of those like where I mean like there's a ton of jank. Like there's some times where the zombies will just like warp onto you, and it looks like they just came out of nowhere. They didn't even take a step, and they're already biting you. So there's a healthy amount of jank, but like we've kind of talked about with co-op games, it's a company you keep. And Mike and I always have a fun time playing co-op games, no matter what they are. And if it's Resident Evil, we enjoy it as well, no matter what kind and form it comes in.
Right. But yeah, that's all I had to say about this game. You got anything else you want to touch on, Mitch, on this one?
No, excited to beat it, and we're actually going to go into the second one just because it's also on this server, so I'm sure we'll be talking about another one at some point on the pod.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so I don't know if I mentioned this on the last podcast episode, but I have been on a light gun kick lately. I've just been craving some old light gun rail shooter action. I'm talking like Time Crisis, House of the Dead, Area 51, all those types of games. I've grown up playing those in the arcades. I remember seeing the very first House of the Dead game and seeing that you could pick up a gun in the arcade and shoot it at the screen, and the zombies would fall apart. If you shot them in the head, their head would come off. If you shot them in their arm would come off. That was the first time I saw like actual gore and like jibs in a game, and it blew my little mind. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then I remember seeing videos and screenshots and hearing about House of the Dead 2 coming out not only in arcades but on the Sega Dreamcast. And the Sega Dreamcast was an amazing console that had a lot of near perfect ports of arcade games to console, which at the time was unheard of. To have a home console that looked as good as the arcade did, man, that was revolutionary at that time. So thinking, man, I could get a Sega Dreamcast, buy this game, buy the light gun controllers, and play this at home just like in the arcades, that was just so amazing to me. I remember watching the House of the Dead 2 Sega Dreamcast trailer over and over and over again on my dial-up internet, sitting there waiting for it to buffer and just to get through like a 1-minute trailer of this game. I was so hyped for it. And even with Time Crisis, that was another amazing light gun shooter that I remember they had at what was that arcade at the mall in Peoria? Aladdin's Palace.
Yeah, I think it was Aladdin's Palace.
Yeah. So there was this tiny mall or a tiny arcade in the mall in Peoria called Aladdin's Palace, and it was a really cool spot. Peoria really didn't have a whole lot of arcades there, so that was, for a while, that was it. You might have a bowling alley or a skating rink that had some arcade machines or some other place like that, but that was like our only real arcade, and it was tiny.
Or an in play for a very short time, which we've talked about in the pod extensively.
Yeah. So I loved those games. I still do. The issue is that they're not very accessible. You can have an elaborate setup on your computer where you're emulating the old arcade machines, and then there are very expensive light gun peripherals that you can use with your computer. But again, that's a high barrier of entry because there's a lot of setup involved and a lot of cost involved. And a lot of the home consoles that had light gun games, such as the Sega Dreamcast, as I mentioned, or the PlayStation 2 or the Xbox. And yeah, there were light gun games on older consoles, but I think it really hit its stride during that console generation of the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and Dreamcast. The problem with that is if you were to get those consoles today, get those games, and get those controllers, they only work on CRT televisions, which I managed to track one down recently. I had hit somebody up on Facebook Marketplace and got me an old school CRT TV for free. And the main reason I hunted that down was so I could play light gun games. So the other day, I set everything up, got my CRT, got my PlayStation 2, got this game called Vampire Night, which is basically like a House of the Dead ripoff with instead of zombies, it's got vampires. And I'm quite certain that, it was developed by Sega, so I'm quite certain that it was made by some of the same people that worked on the House of the Dead. It's got all the same campiness to it. And yeah, I set everything up and I had an amazing time. The great thing about those light guns that worked with the old tube TVs is they are extremely responsive and extremely accurate. And a lot of the modern solutions that work on flat screen TVs don't quite have that responsiveness. They've got kind of a bit of a delay or a drag to them, kind of like the Nintendo Wii did, because it's using the same technology as the Nintendo Wii. And even then, it can get out of calibration. And even with the latest remake of the House of the Dead, it's just having to constantly recalibrate it is just an issue. So to play this and to realize how perfect the technology was back then and how much it still holds up today is an exciting, fun game to play. I was really enjoying myself. Now,
I don't know if you want to talk about your gun, the way how you fixed your gun.
Yeah, I was just about to roll into that.
Read your mind.
So I had gotten 2 light guns for my PlayStation 2. I had the GunCon 2, which was like the official one released by Namco that all the games supported. But I wanted a second player light gun. So I'd ordered one off eBay. And it was a third-party one I'd never heard of. And it was new old stock, meaning that this gun was still in its original packaging and had never been used. So this gun has been unopened for over 20 years. And the reason I wanted this particular third-party gun, despite never hearing about it, or hearing of this, I'd never heard of the company, and I'd definitely never seen this in stores. There's several reasons. One, it was wireless, which I thought was cool. And 2, it was backwards compatible with PlayStation 1 light gun games. It's got a switch on it that lets you switch between PlayStation 2, it emulating the PlayStation 2 GunCon 2, or it emulating either of the 2 PlayStation 1 light guns that were released. Because on PlayStation 1, some games supported one of the released light guns called the Justifier, and other games only supported the original GunCon, which was annoying because then you had to have two different guns if you wanted to be able to play every light gun on the PlayStation 1. So this gun an emulator for both of those built in, and it could emulate the GunCon 2 on the PlayStation 2. So you got all those light gun games compatible with this one light gun. So this package looked like it had seen better days. I mean, the thing was like completely yellow. It came in that plastic. It's called like bubble packaging or whatever. I don't know if you ever have bought an electronic item from like Walmart or Target or Best Buy, and it came in that horrendous sealed plastic thing that you had to cut open and ended up like slicing your hand open trying to get through this sharp ass plastic.
Yeah, I feel like all like the wrestler action figure guys that I would collect, they always came in that really terrible plastic.
Yeah, they came in it. Old like portable CD players came in it. Headphones come in it. Yeah, it's awful. Anyway, so it completely yellowed. I think at one point it was clear. So this thing sat out in the sun probably for a while. I don't know. I ended up cutting it open. Also, the inside of the cardboard was completely molded over. So I'm like, I'm opening this thing up like thinking I'm getting an infection just breathing around this thing.
So anyway, speaking of Resident Evil, that might be how a zombie outbreak happens.
Yeah, I'm about to turn into a zombie with this packaging. So anyway, I throw that away and quadruple bag it and throw it in the dumpster to get it out of my house and away from me. But anyway, the gun itself is crispy. Comes out, looks great. I put batteries in it. It's cool because it's got this clip that releases like a real gun, and that's where the batteries go. They go in the clip of the gun. So I put the batteries in the clip, put it in the gun, turn it on, nothing. Dead on arrival. The thing doesn't work. So I'm like, no! I was so excited about this one in particular, and I was really upset. But I was like, all right, man. Before you just call it a lost cause and throw this away, I'm like, you're smart. You can figure this out. You might be able to repair it. I've been known to repair a few things in the past, as I've spoken on other episodes in the podcast.
Yep.
But anyway, sure enough, I figured out what was wrong with it. I took it apart, took a look at it, and when you put the battery pack into the handle of the gun, it was not making a connection. The positive negative on the battery pack was not making a connection to the gun itself. There was just like about a centimeter gap between the connectors. So all I had to do was bend the prongs up and extend the springs in the gun to where those actually connected, and voila, it closed the circuit, the gun had electricity, and then the status light LED came on. And I was so happy that that's all it was and that's all it needed. So I put the gun back together and convinced my fiance to play some Vampire Knight with me that night, reluctantly.
Props to her for that.
Yeah, for real. But anyway, which makes me wonder how many of these things back in the day were returned by customers who just thought they didn't work, not knowing all they had to do was reach in there and then bend those prongs a little bit and it would work.
Yeah, probably quite a few.
Probably quite a few, and they probably all got thrown out or destroyed, and that's why this one's probably so hard to come by these days. But yeah, anyway, it's a whole rabbit hole I went down looking up all these light guns. There's about 1,000,001 different variations that were released for all these consoles: PlayStation, Sega Saturn, Dreamcast, Xbox, and many that were not released in the US for legal reasons because they straight up looked like real guns. And all the ones released in the US look like goofy Nerf guns, but all the ones like Japan and other countries got the cool ones that were like officially licensed by Beretta and like really look like a Beretta and have removable clips for some reason and actually like cock back when you shoot them. It's crazy. Like, it could be a whole nother, I gotta be careful. This could be a whole nother avenue I go down trying to collect all these rare and awesome light guns.
I mean, Japan always has the cooler stuff when it comes to arcade in general, so it makes total sense.
Yeah. But yeah, that was my my adventure, Vampire Knight. I'd never played that game before. If you like House of the Dead, you're going to love Vampire Knight. It's relatively cheap on the PlayStation 2. I mean, and if you have a CRT or you're willing to get one and go down the same rabbit hole I went to recreate that at-home rail shooter light gun experience, and I highly recommend it.
This is why I appreciate you on the pod, because it's not something I probably would ever do, but I enjoy hearing you talk about it and do it yourself.
Yeah. And there's a Resident Evil game released on the PlayStation 2 that supports the GunCon 2. And that is one that a lot of people have not played, but to me it's one of the cooler ones in the Resident Evil series. So basically it plays just like a typical old school Resident Evil game, like Code Veronica or anything else where you're walking around in third person. And you can play it with the GunCon because it has a D-pad and an A and B button. So you can go through the levels and solve the puzzles and do everything you need to do. And when you're confronted with a monster or a zombie or a boss, you pull the trigger on the GunCon, it goes into first-person view, and then you can actually aim at the screen and headshot the zombies and take them out. And then as soon as you move the D-pad, it goes right back into third-person view. And to me, that was the best implementation of the GunCon 2 controller of any PlayStation 2 game that supported it. And really it's unfortunate that that's the only game that took it to that level and actually made something that involved. Everything else is just an on-rail shooter.
Right.
All right, well, I've gone on about that long enough, but I recommend light guns to anybody that is interested in something like that. So
if it didn't move so much, I think it'd be something that I would be interested in. It's more like I have to haul all these guns and any other peripherals you could get for video games that I think are cool, but I can't justify it.
Yeah, and the CRT TVs, man, they're like 100 pounds a piece, and they're huge. They take up a bunch of space. They throw out your back moving them. There were plenty of people giving away really big CRT televisions, and I ultimately was for free or like $10 or something. But ultimately, I was like, man, realistically, I got to get a smaller one. Mm-hmm. I can't just go all out. I don't even know where I'm going to put this thing. So I had to get a smaller, more modest television because I'm just going to be using it for these light guns anyway, nothing else. So it's not going to get a ton of use.
Yeah, I remember hauling like my small CRTV from friend's house to friend's house whenever we have a sleepover because we all had to bring our Xbox and a TV, and I'm like hauling this thing, like up multiple steps to one of my buddy's rooms so we can hook up our consoles and play online games together. But man, the devotion to not just do split screen, but to always have my own TV. I'm very surprised at the motivation I had as a kid.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, at the time you were having fun, so you weren't even thinking about it.
Nope.
All right, so you and I went down nostalgia lane for the Xbox 360 last episode, and we covered basically all the games from or not all the games, but the highlights from your history, your played game list on your Xbox 360 account.
Yep.
Now, there are other things that we would like to dive into about the Xbox 360. One lesser known than the other. So the first one being, I didn't even know it was called this, but it's the Xbox Live Vision. Do you want to kind of go into detail on what that even is?
Yeah, I didn't know it was called that at first either until I saw the Wikipedia page, and essentially it is a USB plug-in webcam that is designed specifically for the Xbox 360. And I thought it'd be fun because they actually there are a lot of games that were compatible with this camera. You could use them for specific things that we're going to get into. But if you look at the Wikipedia page, there are quite a few games that it has that are compatible with it for a multitude of reasons. But maybe before we get into that, we can talk about some of the highlights of games that you and I have actually used that camera with. For myself, I know I shout out my buddy John all the time, but him and I played a lot of Texas Hold'em still to this day on Xbox. But back then, we played a Texas Hold'em game on the 360. Well, it was a 4-player Texas Hold'em game, and for the to 8, somewhere in there actually, and you could plug in this Xbox Vision camera, and you could actually live, like, it looked like you're in a room with people playing poker at that point, because it's you in your room, literally, like, chatting with somebody else via video while everybody else is doing the same thing. So, I mean, kind of a crazy concept. They did this exact same thing, and a couple of my buddies would play this a lot too, but everybody loves playing Uno with friends in a room, but they had an Uno game on the Xbox 360, and that one got a little dicey. So, I mean, like, Uno is fun, yes, but this one kind of acted more like a chat roulette, if anybody's to the age where they're familiar with what chat roulette is.
Oh, jeez.
It got a little bit inappropriate on the Uno. Instead of people just, joining games and playing a fun, family-friendly Uno game.
Yeah, why is it on Uno of all games? Why must you taint the Uno game?
I'd never seen it on any other game with this Vision camera either. It was always just on Uno. We did Texas Hold'em, and that was pretty calm. People just played Hold'em, and it was all good. But for some reason, people thought that they could mess around on Uno and make it a chat roulette experience, and it was not a good one. And yeah, I don't think that would not exist in today's age, I don't think, is in the gaming world. With all the regulations and restrictions that we have to protect the children from things like that, me as a child was not protected. And yeah, I saw some interesting things on the old Uno.
Wow. Just looking over this Wikipedia page, just to give people some stats here, it was a USB 2.0 device. It had 2 resolution modes, 320 by 240 pixels at 60 hertz, or 640 by 480 pixels at 30 hertz. So, I mean, pretty low resolution webcam by today's standards, but back then, have a 640 by 480 webcam, probably for relatively cheap. I mean, I don't know what this thing retailed for. I did own one, and I probably only paid maybe 20 or 30 bucks for it. And the cool thing is that it also worked on your Windows computer. I remember plugging this up and using it as a webcam on my computer as well.
I didn't know that. Interesting.
So yeah, it was just this tiny little camera, and I didn't use it for much. I did a few video chats on the Xbox 360, and then I did some chatting with it on my computer as well. But I am impressed by the sheer number of compatible games, because when I had this thing, it seemed like it didn't work with any game. So I'm really surprised by how many games it supported. One of which is Viva Pinata, Trouble in Paradise. Did you know that game supported it?
I had no idea, to be honest with you. That's an interesting one.
Some of these, it tells you what it does in the game.
I was hoping it did.
For this one, it doesn't. It just says other. So I don't know what that means on what it did in that game. But for those that didn't hear our last episode, that was one of Mitch's more highly recommended games for the Xbox 360. Something that he had a lot of good memories playing.
Yeah.
So a lot of them, it's just in-game video support, as you mentioned earlier, like Uno and Texas Hold'em, where you could do video chat while you're playing that game. And then some other stuff like Burnout Paradise, photo taken if the player takes down another player online, wins an online race event, and getting a license. So basically, I guess it would just show your face after you win, so you can be like, hey, and brag and boast.
That's pretty cool.
So some other games are, I mean, it's nothing I was really playing. Like American Idol Encore, Band of Bugs, Bank Shot Billiards, Battlezone, Carcassonne.
Solid Xbox arcade billiards game.
So yeah, a lot of these I haven't even heard of. Apparently in-game video support for Call of Duty Black Ops 2. That's interesting, because I thought they had already ended support for this thing long before Black Ops 2 came out.
I would think so too. Little Duke Nukem 3D, if you will.
Yeah, it says, in the lobbies you could do video chat with that game. So it was released on September 19th, 2006 in North America, which I guess that's right.
I try to think about where I am in school. In 2006, I would have been I would have been in middle school still, so that checks out.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of these games it was just used for video chat during the game, or used to take like profile photos. But this is what I thought was the coolest thing about this peripheral, and this is what I thought should have had wider support. So this used or incorporated digi-mask technology, or in other words, face mapping support, where you could take your picture with this camera and the game would map your face onto a character in the game. And there was a lot of sports games that supported this. It looks like Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2008 all the way through 2012 supported this feature. Pro Evolution Soccer 2008 all the way to the 2011 version supported this. Fight Night Round 4, I did not remember that one. And then Fight Night Champion, Facebreaker, EA Sports MMA, and then my personal favorite, Tom Clancy Rainbow Six Vegas and Tom Clancy Rainbow Six Vegas 2 supported it. I remember using this to map my face on my character in Rainbow Six Vegas, and it was so cool to have my friends come over. I'd be like, come check out this Tom Clancy Rainbow Six game, and we'd play it, and they'd be like, what the... That's you in the game. How the heck did you do that? I'm like, yeah, man, I got my own exclusive character in this Rainbow Six Vegas game. And I think it worked. Did it work in the online too, where you could go online with your character?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it did, because I feel like I remember seeing other people's online characters. Just that people would like just put up like on a piece of paper of like the Joker or something like wild, and that's what would show up on the face.
Yeah, so people got clever with this, and I always thought that was such a cool concept to be able to put yourself in the game. Sure, some games have really robust create a character modes, but you have to sit there and try to get it to look like you. Where with this, you just take a picture and it scans you right into the game. And I incorrectly thought that this died with this peripheral. But Mitch let me know that no, this still lives on. There's still games coming out today that yes, you can map your face on your character. And what game was it you were telling me about that you can do this in?
Yeah, so instead of using this Xbox Vision camera, now you use your iPhone or your smartphone through an app that they have in the store, in the App Store, and you can scan your face using your phone, which uploads to the game on your Xbox or PlayStation or whatever. And the one that I do it on every year is NBA 2K. And they've been doing it on NBA 2K for quite a while. And it kind of leads into our next our next device, but they started by using the Xbox Kinect to upload your face on it, but then slowly transitioned away from the Kinect to actually using an app on your phone to upload it, which your camera on your phone was just a way better way of doing it.
Oh yeah, the iPhone camera is gonna blow this old Xbox Live Vision camera out of the water. I mean, night and day difference.
Yeah.
That's interesting, though. I didn't know that they carried this over to the Kinect.
I think so. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I know at one point they just decided to go to the apps, but I want to say the Kinect was used in some form or fashion at some point. I'm not certain, but I'm pretty sure it was.
So you were kind enough to share your created character. So I got a few things to pull up on the screen here. This first one is just a still image of it. And when you sent this to me, this is hilarious. Because it kind of resembles you, but really it doesn't. This looks like a totally different person.
So I need to say for the people watching that basically when you do these face scans, it only takes your actual face. It does not take your hair. It does not take your eye color. It does not take any of your facial hair. It literally just tries to grab your face shape and your face features, and that's it. So I have to put my own hair on it. I have to put my own facial hair, and I have to put my own eye color. Okay. So in that aspect, like the picture that you're showing now, the hair doesn't exactly match up with what I have now. But maybe if I had like my usual haircuts, yes, my hair's a little long right now. But Yeah, that one's from like maybe 3 years ago, I want to say. So the technology's gotten a little better, but I think from the video that you're going to show next, you still don't think it looks like me very much.
Okay, so that's from an older game, and the other video you sent me is from a more recent version of NBA 2K?
Yes, that's this year's. Yes.
All right, yeah, I gotta pull up this other one. Okay, so then you sent me this video of your created character of you in your latest one, I guess.
Yeah, this is 2K23.
All right, I'm watching the video now. So, all right, this one's hilarious to me because I think this one looks even less like you.
It also could have been a scenario like sometimes I want to put my face in the games. I think it's cool, but like at some point like it could kind of get annoying, like where I have to keep doing it over again to make it, to get exactly where I want it to look. The lighting affects it, like there's a lot of different issues with it, but yeah, I think it looks okay. I think it looks a little different when you're on the court than when you just like show it in this like section, but like I don't know, it just depends on where you're at in the game, like to where it looks a little bit different. But yeah, maybe that one doesn't look as much like me as I think, but it's fun nonetheless.
Yeah, it's a cool concept, but yeah, it's almost like instead of creating yourself, you're creating like a distant cousin or something.
Yep.
Here's my distant cousin Tony. I made him in 2K. That is hilarious.
Yeah, but you could do everything. Like there's other people that have their faces scanned and you play online with each other in this big park in 2K, and we do it every year, and it's a ton of fun actually. Like 2K is really revolutionary in that aspect of like really putting a ton of people together that all have their faces scanned in this game and hooping together.
Do people still do what they did with the Xbox Live Vision and like hold up a picture of someone else's face?
Not that as much, but they get some really ugly faces somehow. Like I don't know what they do, but it just looks like super mangled face. I don't know what they do, but
maybe they're just that ugly in person.
Maybe.
All right, man. But yeah, let's go ahead and roll into our next topic. So yeah, so after that, Xbox then went all out and created the Kinect, which at the time I was not interested in the Kinect at all. I wasn't interested in the Wii. I wasn't interested in the PlayStation Move. And I wasn't interested in Xbox Kinect. Although deep down, I was actually pretty impressed by this thing. And I think I was just being like an old school gamer, like, nah, man, nothing will replace the controller. I'm not just going to become the controller and be waving my hands around. Screw that. But watching the videos at the E3 or other press conferences and stuff that Microsoft was putting on, I was like, okay, man. This is pretty wild that you're able to act stuff out and it's able to put you inside the game.
Yeah, my mom, who's like not even like she's not a big video game fan at all. When I brought this over to her house and like started like showing how it worked and what to do, and we were like playing golf together or something, like she thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, and I recently, well, not super recently, but I picked one of these up at Goodwill for like $12. And the games are crazy cheap because they actually sold very well. So they're plentiful, they're cheap. I mean, most places are just trying to give away the games. Because, I mean, who's really looking for an Xbox 360 Kinect in 2022? So nobody. So, except me.
I still own my Xbox One Kinect, actually. That's which was like, I don't know, I think it was a little bit like higher res, I guess, higher quality version of the one from 360, but it's pretty nice too.
Yeah, and there was a lot of cool things about it. So we're gonna get to the Xbox One Kinect because I definitely got some comments about that. But yeah, so this thing's a lot of fun. I went back, bought a whole stack of games for dirt cheap, and I actually busted this thing out at my my birthday party I threw at my house last year. And it was a hit. Everybody was drinking. It's so easy to pick up. Like you said, you just go in, you play golf, you play baseball, you play soccer, whatever. I mean, you stand in front of it and you just wave and do the action. So when you're in a room full of people drinking some beers and having a good time, it livelied things up, and it was a lot of fun. And it's still impressive technology. Yeah, there's a little bit of lag to it. It's not perfect. But when you're drinking and you're at a party, it doesn't matter. It just adds to the comical part about it. And there's a lot of other cool features they did. And like you had sent me a video of you and your buddy playing Kinect Sports, and it not only is it a camera to pick up your movement, but it's a regular web camera, just like just like the Xbox Live Vision. And while you're doing goofy stuff and playing the games, it's capturing footage of you and storing it in memory. So in Kinect Sports, when everything's all said and done, it will show you a highlight reel of you and your buddy playing these games, and that's also a lot of fun too, to watch that at the end of these games.
Yeah, they put together a really fun little compilation, and you can't hear the sound on, but like it does it to their little like Kinect Sports song, whatever they got going on there, and it was interesting. Like you could like, they're like, hey, if you'd like to see your clip, because they show you it at the end of the game, they're like, if you'd like to upload it, you can go to raresports.com and get it. And so like I downloaded it and uploaded it to Facebook a long time ago.
Now, how long ago was this? How old are you guys in this video?
I think probably young high schoolers. I want to say like maybe freshman or sophomore in high school. Yeah, pretty young. You can see we're in the basements, the spot where I usually would game, and it's a bit messy there at that point. But yeah, we set it up where we could get enough space for us to play some volleyball. That's what we were doing there, and those Kinect Sports games, I mean, they were worth every penny. They're a ton of fun, and you could play online against other people too. So like,
really,
when we're dancing and doing all that other stuff, we're taunting the other team essentially when we're playing online volleyball.
I didn't know the games were online, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Kinect was it was really amazing. And some other cool stuff they had was, even outside of games, you could use voice commands to control your Xbox dashboard. I could be like, Xbox launch Netflix, or Xbox play launch my game, or do this or do that. Like, you could just speak, and it was pretty good at picking it up and actually doing what you want it to do. And you could even use hand gestures to navigate through the menu by like swiping through the different panels and selecting stuff. And I used to love it because I would watch something on Xbox or play some game, or it'd be late at night, I'd be playing a game and I'd get done, I'd just be like, Xbox, turn off, and it would just turn off.
Yeah, to take it a step further, when you were in those, like the Netflixes or the Hulus or whatnot, you could actually use commands within that too. So like, if you wanted to pause it because you wanted to go and grab a drink from the fridge, just be like, Xbox, pause. And it'd pause your Netflix show, and then you can go and grab something and come back and just go, Xbox, play. And then it'll just play it, resume it. It was such a cool feature.
I mean, that even today, that sounds revolutionary. So, because it's just crazy, because there's stuff like this, these amazing technologies that either didn't take off like they should have, or for some reason just the company stopped supporting it. It's like, it's these technologies lost to time. Like, the companies actually have to continue to support this and to continue to bring this forward in every new platform. And this is what makes me want to talk about the Kinect that was released for Xbox One.
Yeah, I've got some stuff to say there too, but go right ahead.
So that was actually an exciting thing to me. I was like, all right, now they're basically selling the Xbox One with the Kinect. Like, you have to get them together, which to me made sense. I was like, the Kinect was just becoming a part of the Xbox. And then Microsoft got this huge backlash about it. But my friend, he bought one of those earlier kits that had the Xbox One and the Kinect, and he was showing me it. And it was way more responsive than the original iteration on Xbox 360. It would recognize him when he walked in the room and log him in. And like, he was doing all kinds of cool stuff. And I was like, this is the future. And then for some reason, people just didn't buy into it and didn't want it on the Xbox One. And then eventually Microsoft made it where you could buy an Xbox One without a Kinect, and then eventually when they re-released the newer models of the Xbox One, they got rid of the connector to connect the Xbox Kinect to it. Man, that's a lot of Kinects, but but yeah, so the later models no longer supported it, so it basically was abandoned by Microsoft.
And I had a later model, but I still held on to my Kinect because it wasn't worth anything to anyone. Nobody wanted it, but thankfully some third-party company got a connector to make it so you plug the Kinect, what would have been the Kinect plug, into it. It was almost like a splitter, and it had a USB on the end of it. So actually you just plug in via USB now, so you can still use it on newer Xboxes.
Oh, okay.
Since you only have to use a USB instead of the actual Kinect outlet that it used to have. So I'm not sure if it would still work on like an Xbox Series S or X at this point, but I might actually give it a try and just see if I plug it in via USB, because I have that third-party cable. If it would still register some things like a Netflix or something like that, you know.
That would be super interesting to try. Yeah, man. I mean, I don't think hardly any games on Xbox One supported the Kinect. Did you end up actually playing any games with it?
I think if I did, it was really just the 360 ones that they had that they come out with. Maybe there was a few, but not many that I know that were super memorable. I want to take it one step back, though. Another cool feature that they abandoned with the Xbox One and Xbox dashboard as time went on. But when you had that Kinect, a feature of the Xbox One was there was a plug-in where you could plug your cable, or like your cable provider, into the back, so you could actually watch cable, or like it was like your screen on your Xbox was your cable. So like you could like there's like an app that just says cable, and it'll bring up your Xfinity Comcast cable, and you can use your remote. Like you don't have to switch an input, essentially. Along with that, so it was nice that you could do that, so you didn't have to switch an input, and you could just like watch your cable through your Xbox, essentially. But a cool thing that they did was have a thing called Snap, and the Snap feature was something that was directly tied to that Kinect. So you would tell your Xbox, "Hey Xbox, snap, Xbox Snap," and it would snap whatever you're watching, whether it's on cable or even it could be Netflix, and it would put a mini screen in the top left of your screen, so you could play your game on the main part of your screen, but then they had a little thing up top that was just your cable, so you could watch TV while you were playing games. And I thought that was so neat. I would use it all the time with I lived with my parents. I used their cable. I would just plug in my Xbox to it, and I would watch, an NBA game while I'm playing an NBA game, or something like that. Like it was a cool feature, but they just got rid of it after a while.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with cable basically dying now, to me it's already dead. I don't know anybody that's watching stuff on cable anymore, and everything being streaming services now. That doesn't seem so useful today. But you could do something similar with Netflix, like have Netflix playing in the corner, have Hulu playing in the corner.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if you could do that on then or not, if you could do Netflix or if it was just your cable subscription. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there were a lot of really neat ideas that Microsoft was baking into the Xbox One, and I know that the gaming community just did not react well to it, but in hindsight, they were doing some cool stuff.
Well, that is what the Xbox was. That's why it was called the Xbox One in the first place. It was supposed to be the Xbox all-in-one entertainment system. It was video gaming. It was, movement activities like exercise and whatnot. A lot of the Kinect stuff you could do a lot of exercise stuff with. But then it was also like entertainment, where you could like use that Snap feature, for instance, and you could watch entertainment stuff while you play games. So it was really supposed to be more than just a gaming console. That's what they were selling, but they got a lot of backlash for that because a lot of gamers just wanted a gaming console.
Yeah.
Even though it was still a very powerful console for gaming.
I'm trying to see all the Kinect games that were released on Xbox One, but there's not not a good. I'm not finding a good list that separates. It's showing all of them. It's showing the ones.
A standalone Kinect for Xbox One bundled with a digital copy of Dance Central Spotlight. So Dance Central was one that was a 360 title, but it looks like Dance Central did a Xbox One title as well.
Apparently, I'm banned from Reddit for some reason. I don't know why. I never use that site, but it's telling me they've gotten too many requests for my IP address. That's strange.
Interesting.
But there's a list on Reddit, but I can't view it.
I will
try this one.
Reddit.
Yeah, there's really nothing. It's just like maybe if they released some more games on it, maybe if they got better support on Xbox One game-wise, because the only ones I'm seeing right here are Rabbids Invasion, the interactive TV show, Kinect Sports Rivals, which was the sequel to the Kinect Sports on Xbox 360. They released Blue State on the Kinect. That's pretty cool. That's a rail shooter. Speaking of, you can get that on Steam. That's actually a pretty cool game. Commander Cherry, never heard of that. Zoo Tycoon Ultimate Animal Collection. That does not sound like it would appeal to me. Dance Central 3, Fantasia Music Evolved, and D4 Dark Dreams Don't Die. That looks kind of...
I see somebody has Tomb Raider Definitive Edition on this one, and it checks that Reddit post. It checks a body tracking thing too, so that's interesting.
Yeah, this D4 Dark Dreams Don't Die actually sounds pretty cool. It kind of looks like
I've heard of that game.
You said you have heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
It's an interactive game for Xbox One Kinect. You will fill the character's role as a time-traveling detective investigating his wife's death. You will go deep into the world of the living past to solve this murder. That's a Kinect game? That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd take that as a regular game.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. I mean, there were
a lot of the list is primarily dance or sport games, though, which, I mean, those are great type of games to play, you know.
Yeah, it's not my forte, though. But yeah, that was very popular with it, was a dance and sport games. But yeah, there were some cool hidden gems on the Kinect, and some games used it in more subtle ways. I remember playing Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Future Soldier, and you could go into this gun mode where you can view your gun and use your hand to like take it apart and change the attachments on the guns and put it together. And I think you could even like test fire it with the Kinect, which was cool. So yeah, some games were finding clever ways to incorporate it, although it wasn't anything that was like core to the gameplay.
That's almost like VR-esque now. A lot of VR gun games are like, hey, like unattaching a gun and putting your own like attachments on it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and that's like a whole another conversation in of itself. That VR, everything was leading to VR. Like Nintendo Wii, PlayStation Move, Xbox Kinect, all of that was just like the precursor to us moving into this crazy advanced VR times we're living in now. Yeah, any standout games that you remember on the Kinect?
Yeah, there was one. It's not really a standout, but I think it was one worth mentioning because we're horror game fans. Rise of Nightmares was one that I played. I was a fresh college student. I remember it very well. I was in my dorm room, and I had a very tiny dorm, and it just did not have a lot of space for a Kinect, but I really wanted to try out this game because it was an interesting idea, an interesting story, but it was all through the Kinect, and it was a horror game. And I remember like probably the most difficult thing I've ever done, like trying to get anywhere on this game. I don't think I even got through the first level, to be honest with you, like, because like it really made you try and like mimic movements like you do in VR now, like as far as walking and like moving in different directions. But with an Xbox 360 Kinect at that time, the technology was just not there for you to be able to like go through and do a whole story driven game and try and walk to certain areas and do certain things. It was tough, and especially in a dorm room where I have very limited space, it was not working for me.
So I have heard of that game, and it looks cool. Looking at the screenshots now, it's got good graphics. It looks scary and gory. And I own that game too, because when I got a hold of a Kinect, of course, I was like, are there any horror games? And then Rise of Nightmares came up. So I picked up a copy for cheap, but I've never actually played it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to give it a go like now in like maybe a bigger space than what I had at the time. But like I just remember like trying to like it to register me walking was like difficult enough. I'm like, how am I going to get through this game?
There's one game that I remember that was a good standout, and that was Kung Fu something. You know what I'm talking about? It's like Kung Fu Attack or whatever. Oh.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Kinect games for Xbox One. There is Kung Fu for Kinect.
Kung Fu High Impact. That was it.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, that was, I guess it was just called Kung Fu. Kinect Kung Fu.
I mean, I feel like a Kung Fu game would be great too, because I mean, just using hand motions. And,
and it was like a side-scrolling beat 'em up, and there's a video. Let me play it. Super tiny. What the heck?
While you're doing that, one that worked very well, that kind of in line with that theme is I played a lot of I know everybody loved Fruit Ninja on their phone point in time, but I played the Fruit Ninja for Kinect.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Oh my gosh, that was great, man. It's literally all hands and it registered super well, and I'm just cutting everything and getting a workout. It was great.
But yeah, Kung Fu was a side-scrolling beat 'em up, and it literally cut you out and put you in the game. So you see your whole self from the camera in the game, and you attack everything, and anything you touch registers as a hit. So you could just sit there and go like this, and as long as your body was touching the enemy, it was like registering as damage. So you could sit there and poke at an enemy, slap an enemy, punch an enemy, kick an enemy, whatever you want. And then between levels, it would have you pose in certain poses, and then it would put you in like comic book style cutscenes with your poses that it had you do.
Sick.
It was super cool, and it was a lot of fun. So that's definitely one I recommend. Anyway, but yeah, that's all I got on the Kinect. It's a great console. You do need a lot of room to play it. You're right about that. And it doesn't always register how it should.
But it was a step in the right direction for what was soon to be virtual reality in general and using headsets and whatnot. So
yeah, which
for
was
the
fun.
time period, it was cool.
Yeah, it's just funny. It's like no matter how close we get to perfection, like VR games they work very well, but people are still like, it's still a little too janky. It's still a little too janky. And yeah, I mean, it's true. There's always going to be a little bit of jank, but it's like, when is it going to be tolerable amount of jank? Because to me, the Kinect was still serviceable.
It won't be tolerable for some people until you get an implant in the back of your head and you're actually inside the game at that point. And
yeah. Anyway, that's we're well over time again, man. We're trying to beat our last episode for longest episode, but this is another good one. A lot of stuff I've had fun with and really enjoyed, and probably should dive back in sometime soon. But anything else?
We really have been the nostalgia cast for the past couple episodes, but it's been a great walk down memory lane for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else you want to touch on, or is that it?
No, I think that's it. I mean, we'll touch on 360 again. I'm sure it'll come up in many shapes and forms. There's just it was my favorite console I've ever owned, I think, and just a lot of classic games and peripherals that we've had a lot of fun with.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Catch you guys next time. You can find our episodes on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Mitch, where else are we at?
Yeah, you can find us on Twitter at The Hills Are Silent, Instagram at Instagram/Hills Are Silent, TikTok at The Hills Are Silent Podcasts, and YouTube again is at The Hills Are Silent. If you have any questions, comments, thank you, Claire, for the wonderful email about Golden Tea. Thank you, John, for always commenting as well on a lot of our episodes. If you'd like to send us an email, you can find us at hillsersilent@gmail.com. We'll catch you in the next episode.